All right, guys, welcome back to another video by FRC Team 10973, the Sea Raiders. This is Julian, our team's captain, and today I'm going to show you a bunch of the beginner's guides to FRC Java programming. Over the course of the next couple of videos, I'm going to take you through everything you need to know about FRC programming in Java, starting from the very beginner's course, which is today. I'm going to go over a lot of the basics of Java, a lot of the core concepts that you need to know. And in the next couple of videos, I'm going to go specifically into FRC type of programming. But for now, this is just a complete beginner's guide to Java. Now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and we'll get right into it. Give me 1 second. All right. Perfect. So as you can see here, I have my screen shared here. All I did was create an example FRC project, which I'm going to go into in the next couple of videos. But for this video, really all you need to know is that you need some sort of interface in order to do Java. Now, I'm using a Visual Studio Code here, as you can see, that honestly is probably needed for FRC because of the fact that WPILib has their own specific version of VS Code for you to use. But yeah, I'll go into how to download that in the next videos. But for now, I'm just going to open up an example document that's really blank. You'll see that I have a package here, which basically just means that it's nested inside of a specific folder in my project so that Java knows what to run and, what kind of things I'm importing here, which is completely fine. If your project doesn't have this because you're using a different editor, that's perfectly fine. All right. With that, let's get into our first topic. All right. Now, our first topic in Java will be variables, right? They're the simplest to learn, and we'll kind of just go into most of the variables that you're going to need. All right. So the first thing I'll do actually is type a comment. All right. So a comment is something that isn't code related that the computer will just skip over, but it's something that makes the user able to read, and it makes your code much more readable. I heavily recommend them inside your project. For example, in our example subsystem, you'll see that there are a lot of different comments. You can always tell they're comments because they're green and they don't really light up like the other code does. All right. So that's our first thing. And I'll include a little comment. I'll say this is a beginner's intro to Java. This is a comment. You can start a comment by doing 2 forward slashes, and that's going to create a comment. If you don't do that, and I start typing, then you'll see that the code will start, doing different things, which we don't want. All right, perfect. So with that, now I guess we'll go into actual variable stuff. First off, I'm going to create a sample class. We'll get into a class later, but what I want you to do is just copy what I'm typing word for word if you're following along, and I'll explain what we're doing a little bit later. But first off, I'm just going to say public class, and then I can call this Java intro, okay? So Java intro, and then I'm just going to do a curly bracket in order to separate that. Let's see, is that fine on the screen? It's fine. Let me get rid of this. We don't need this. Now is it easier to see? Oh yeah, perfect. All right. So inside of Java intro, I'm going to need one thing called a function. All right. Now I'm going to define my function by saying public static void main string with a curly bracket args. It stands for arguments. And then do another curly bracket and enter. Actually, this is supposed to be a parentheses. Parentheses and then curly bracket. So if you follow along how this is doing, you're going to have the basic setup that you need to start coding in Java. Again, I'll explain all this later, but this is basically what you need. Now, I'm going to define a bunch of variables for us, okay? The first variable that we're going to include, I'll do a long one. is something called a Boolean, okay? So I'll define variables. And the first one is a Boolean. Now, what a Boolean is a true or false statement, okay? Not statement, but like true or false, basically, all right? And a variable, I forgot to explain this before, is really just a piece of data that we can store and come back to later. All right. So really all we have to do with a variable is store it with using a name, and we can get that data that we stored in the name back later. For example, with a Boolean, I'll go ahead and say Boolean is alive is equal to true. All right. And what I just said was the Boolean, either a true or false statement, is equal to true right now, right? I can set my variable equal to something using this equal sign, right? So if you've never done programming before, this equal sign just means that I'm setting it a variable equal to something. And you'll notice in Java, there's two main things that are sort of different from other programming languages. For example, if you've done like Python before or something, which is that you have on the left side before the variable, you need to tell the computer what data type you're using, right? So for example, if I'm using a Boolean data type, right, a variable basically, then I need to explain that to the computer. So Boolean is alive is equal to true. Last thing is that the Boolean has that my line of code has a semicolon afterwards, okay? Now, a semicolon is used to end a statement in Java, and it's basically a way for the computer to know when I'm ending one line of code and starting another one. Because technically, I could have something like this, where I have like equals true here, and the computer would read lines 10 and 11 as one singular statement, which is very important in Java and many programming languages. So that's why we have this semicolon at the end here, okay? Now, coming up after this, what else do we need to do? Well, we're going to go ahead and explain the next couple of variables, which my next one here is an integer. Now, you might know an integer from math class, and it's actually the same thing from math inside of our programming. So an integer is a whole number, positive or negative, that rounds to a whole number if like we give it a decimal, but we'll get into that later. Basically, just a whole number, positive or negative, okay? And I can define an integer by saying int, which stands for integer. Let's see, whole number, this is the name of my variable, is equal to 5, okay? So I'm saying my integer here, whole number, that's the name, is equal to 5, alrighty? And we can use this integer later on. But right now, we're just going to define all of our variables. So there's that. Next up, we have a double, all right? A double is really any number, right? Which means that it can have decimal points, all right? This one does not round, whereas our integers do round. So that's important to know. Rounds to a whole number, does not round. So my doubles can hold decimal places. For example, I can say double decimal number is equal to 2.45, right? I could say, hey, I'm equal to 2.45, all right? Now, there are many other variables for numbers that we can use. For example, there's something called a long. A long is basically like a really huge number that can't fit inside an integer or double. And that's because the fact that these numbers or variables, they take up memory inside your computer. And if there isn't enough, like memory available for one number, for example, an integer, then you have to say that I need it to be a long, which is a really long number, and the computer will know that it needs more memory for that specific variable. So that's really our numbers here. The other two variables that we're going to need is a string and a character. Now, I'll explain a character first here, because I think characters kind of build into strings. A character is just like English, actually. It's really just a single character, right? Now, there are different types of things called like a Unicode character. If you've ever taken computer science before, they've probably gone through a bunch of the different, like representations of English characters that there are inside of programming, such as like the Unicode characters. So I just could be Unicode. I'm not going to go into Unicode right now, but just so you know, they are out there. And a character can be stored like this. So I say character, single character, that's what the name of it is equal to, and put it in parentheses, or not parentheses, quotation marks. No, we'll just do it like this. Maybe equal to A, right? But the thing is, you see, A cannot be resolved to a variable, right? So that's why a lot of the times you can put it in quotation mark. Although our problem is that this is a character, right? And a character cannot be converted to a string. And that's the next thing that I want to go into right now, which is a string. Okay, we'll get back to this thing later. I'll explain it a little bit. But for now, I'm going to say, oops, sorry, let me explain the strings first. A string is basically a quote-unquote string, right, of characters that basically is like kind of like an English phrase that like returns an English like phrase, right? So for example, I can have a string, just say my string, and that's equal to I like apples, right? You notice I'm always adding the semicolon at the end here just as a reminder. But how we write strings, just like you saw in the character, is that we have a string, my string, and it's equal to something called I like apples. All right. Now, how we write the string inside of Java is you add a quotation mark at both ends to say, hey, this is like my string. And then after that, we're going to write whatever kind of like English type phrase you want, right? Now, going back to characters here, there's something important that we have to distinguish, okay? String, my string is equal to quotation mark, I like apples, okay? But if I go back to the character and I say my character, then a character has to be represented by a single quotation mark, okay? I don't really know how to explain them better, but it's like a single mark, okay? So if my character is A, then I constitute it as A, and then I close my semicolon, right? Now, why is this important? Well, I didn't tell you guys this before because I didn't want you to confuse the difference between a character and a string, okay? A character is one character, right? It can't really be represented by like a string like this, a string of characters. That's why it's called that. So, the important distinction between my characters and my strings are that a character is signified by a one singular quotation, whereas the other ones are a double quotation mark. All right, so that's important to know. And if I do like multiple of these, right, you'll notice that invalid character constant because of the fact that this isn't one character, right? I need to do something like this. All right, perfect. With that, that is really a lot of the variables that you're going to use in FRC. Mainly, it's going to come down to your integers, your doubles, your booleans, and your strings. But characters are just, they're in there. But I have a challenge for you guys now, okay? So I'll create a little challenge. I want you guys to make a variable of every type and print it out. okay? Now, actually, I'm not going to have you print it out. Just make a variable of every type, okay? So how I typically do challenges here is I have you pause the video, and you can't look back into the video unless you're stuck, okay? So pause the video, don't look at the code I wrote, and I want you to basically write a single variable for each of the ones that we've defined. So I want you to write one Boolean, one integer, one double, one character, and one string, just like I've written here. I want you to name them something random, right? Something that you remember, and say maybe like integer apples is equal to 7, right? That's what you can do. So take a moment, do that. I'll give you guys, however much time you need, just pause the video, and then we'll come back and go on to our next thing. All right. So I trust that you've paused the video and done that challenge. So now we're going to move on to conditionals, okay? Now, you might wonder, what is exactly like a conditional, right? It doesn't sound like anything English, right? A conditional, maybe you've heard it in like, I don't know, your English class before. But how does it apply to programming? Well, a conditional is basically a check to see if a given statement is true. Okay, that's what a conditional is. So I'll write that down. Here you go. Now, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, but there's something called if statements, if else statements, just else statements. There's a lot of different statements that you can give a computer, and whether it's true or not will decide whether it executes a certain code or not. Okay. The first one I'm going to introduce you guys to is our if statement. If statements are very popular, and you basically have an if statement in like every single language. It's very important to have them. So first off, we'll just say if, and then include some parentheses inside of here. And we're going to check for if one of these variables is equal to something. For example, I can say if whole number is equal to 5, then I want to do something, okay? But there's something important to distinguish inside of if statements, okay? And it's this. There's 3 main things you need inside an if statement. The first one is parentheses around the statement that you're checking. In some languages, you don't need them, but Java, you definitely need them. The second thing is that you need curly brackets around the code that you're executing if this statement is true. So execute curly bracket code if true. Okay. And the third thing that you need to know is that you have double parentheses, sorry, not double equal signs for checking if a statement, right? For checking just a statement if it's true or not. You have single I keep saying parentheses, single equation marks, single equal signs for if you are setting a variable equal to something. So this says whole number is equal to 5, whereas this one is checking if whole number is equal to 5. All right, that's very important to know. So with that, I'm going to just maybe print out a statement to say, hey, whole number is equal to 5. Now, if you guys don't know, one of the most basic things you can do to interact with your user in Java when you actually run your code is via printing it out in the terminal. You might have noticed before that I have a terminal in my bottom side of the screen here, okay? Your terminal might not show immediately, depending on the code editor that you're using, but most of them have a terminal at the bottom that you can use, all right? So if I run my code right now, nothing's really going to happen, right? I'll run it. And you can see here, it gives us a bunch of stuff about where we're running it from, but nothing about what the code actually did. So I'm going to need to print out a statement to say, hey, whole number is equal to 5. How I can do that is using my system, okay? In Java, there's a particularly long statement that you can do to print out to the terminal. And I'll write it down right here. System dot out dot print ln. It stands for print line. Inside, we're going to pass into print line really anything. The good thing about print line is it takes like any type of variable you want to give it. You can give it like a string, character, a double, an int, or a boolean. And when we give it that variable, it's going to print that into our terminal here. Okay. So I'm going to have it print out a string. Now remember, how I can tell it's a string is because of the double quotation marks. And I'm going to say this integer is equal to 5. And I end it with a semicolon. Now everything inside the parentheses is going to be printed out to my terminal, as you'll see right now. There you go. You see here, this integer is equal to 5. Because whole number is actually equal to 5, then I print it out. But if I change this to 7, then this code is not going to run. Let's check it out. And as you can see, when I run my new code, which is all of this past the blue dot, then you can see that this integer is not equal to 5. It doesn't say anything. Now, for the user, it might get pretty confusing if it just doesn't say anything if the integer is not equal to 5, right? So I'll say this, equal to 7. So what I can do is include an else statement in order to get this code actually, functioning a little bit more efficiently. So I'll say this, else, curly brackets, enter. Now, after my if statement, you can add two types of things, an else statement and an if-else statement. We'll get to the if-else statement afterwards. But our else statement basically checks for anything and it basically runs after our if statement is not true. So if the statement is true, whole number is equal to 7, then it's going to do this, and it's going to ignore whatever comes in our else statement. But if execute curly bracket, if the if statement is not true, right? So that's important to recognize, is that we're going to execute this curly bracket if the if statement is not true. Alrighty. Now inside my else statement, I'm just going to do the same thing, system.out.println, and I'm going to say, let's see, this integer is not equal to 7. Okay. Now if I run my code again, whole number is equal to 5, remember, and it's going to tell me this integer is not equal to 7. All right. So there you go. That's the basics of your conditionals for your if and your else statement. These are going to be the two really big ones that we're going to do, but there's a bunch of other smaller ones that are going to be included as well. For example, let's talk about our if-else statement. So after my if statement, but before my else statement, I can add an if-else statement, right? Or they also call them else-ifs in Java. That's how you're supposed to do it. And basically, I'm going to check for if the whole number is equal to 5. Okay. Now, because I wrote it weirdly, I have to format it again. But here we go. Now, what is an else-if statement? An else-if statement is a statement that checks for another statement if it's true, right? But only after the first if statement is false. So whatever comes after that if statement, I've checked. Is the whole number equal to 5? If my if statement and my else if statement are not equal or not true, then I'm going to run my else statement. Okay. Now I worded that pretty weirdly, but I'm going to explain it using code. I'm going to say system.out.println this integer is equal to 5, just like we did before. So I'm going to output this system.out.println code, and I'm going to say, hey, this integer is equal to 5. And as you can see, since my integer is equal to 5, we get a very nice code right here that explains it's equal to 5. And what the code did from a computer standpoint is it checked, is the whole number equal to 7? If not, then I'm going to check, is the whole number equal to 5? Since it's equal to 5, it doesn't run the else statement, and it only runs the statement inside of here. So we're going to say execute curly bracket if the above statement is not true and this statement is true. Alrighty. So there you go. That is your if statement, your else if statement, and your else statement. Okay. Cool. Now, there is a different way to do this, which is something called a switch statement. Okay. Now, you can call it a switch statement or a switch like case inside of Java. But really all it is basically like a bunch of if and if else statements all in a row, right? And I'll explain it here using my code. I'm going to keep using my whole number variable, but you can really do this for any number or any string even you want. Actually, yeah, let's use it for a string, just so that we can diversify our code. So for me, I'm going to say switch, and you notice my code recognizes the switch statement. And I'll say this, a whole bunch of if statements are about to happen. It's very rapid fire, which is why a lot of developers like using it. But I'm going to say switch, and the variable I'm going to pass in is my string. Okay. And then I believe we use a colon here, if I remember. No, we're going to use a curly bracket. Sorry, it's been a little while. And I'm going to say, after my curly bracket, case, and then a string. Okay, so I'm going to say case, parentheses. Maybe we're going to check if my string is I like apples. That'll be the first one. Now we're going to use a colon. And we're just going to say, maybe we'll like system.out.println, he likes apples. So I'm going to say system.out.println, he likes apples. Alrighty. And then I'm going to break. All this means is that I'm going to literally, like it says, break out of the switch statement so that I don't have to check a lot of the other cases. So I'm going to do two cases here. All right. Each case is like an if statement. So I'm going to say case if my string is equal to I like bananas, then we're going to say system.out.println he likes bananas. We're going to break. Now, let's run our switch statement and check what we get out. Alrighty. So we ran it, and we got he likes apples. Now, is this true? Yes. The string here says I like apples. So after we get our case statement equal to true, we're going to do he likes apples. And since we break out here, we ignore this other case statement, and we don't have to check for it, which is very key when you're trying to conserve memory and you're trying to make your code run as quickly as possible. Because, if you ever do something like high performance computing outside of FRC, or even sometimes in FRC, you're really going to want to make sure that any algorithms that you do are running at full capability. They're running as fast as possible. So that's why we use switch statements at times. Or, like if, else if, right? We're not running a bunch of if statements because we just cancel all these if my first if statement is true. All right, with that, I have another challenge for you guys, okay? Now, this challenge is going to be to create an if else if else statement that checks for if your let's see, checks for if your character is equal to a certain character, right? Character variable, I guess I'll say. Okay. So that's your challenge. You're going to create an if else else statement that checks for if your character is equal to a certain character. All right. Pause the video right now. Go ahead and do that, and then come back. All right. All right. So I trust that you've paused the video, and after this, we're gonna kind of go over this challenge because this one's a little bit tougher than our initial one. And I'll say this: the solution to this challenge is as follows. And I just have this. Let's see. We're gonna say first of all, if my character, which is my character, is equal to single quotation marks, remember, D, then I'm going to char is D. All right. After that, I'll go over my else if statement. Else if my character is equal to A, which is actually what we want, or actually what our character is, then I'm just going to copy paste this real quick. Then system.out.line char is A. And then we have an else statement. And I can paste this and say character is not equal to A or D. All right. If I save that and run it, let's check and see what happens. And you'll see that character is A, as you can see right there. All right. So there you go. That's your conditionals for you. Those are the main ones that we're going to use in FRC and really anywhere else. Cool. With that, we've covered two things right now, variables and conditions. Next up, let's talk a little bit about your for loops and your while loops, okay? First off, I'll go over what a for loop is, okay? A for loop is a certain action that is done a set amount of times. So basically a continuing loop of code that is done a certain repeated a certain amount of times. All right. Now, for loop is specified the amount of times it's specified by a human, right? Someone who's writing the code. And I can say, hey, I want this code to run 3 times. All right. Now, there's many different kinds of for loops. The first one is the very basic one, and that's the one we're going to cover right now. Later on in this video, we'll cover some for loops that are a little bit more complex, but we need to learn a little bit more before we go over those. So first off, let's do just our simple for loop. We're going to say for, and then do a parentheses. We're going to say int, which stands for integer, I is equal to 0. Now I want you to do a semicolon here. I is less than 3. Semicolon again. I plus plus. Okay. Then you're going to close your parentheses and you're going to open your curly brackets and press enter, right? After you've pressed that, you're going to see that we have another sort of like a block of code that we can input here that we're going to run for 3 times, right? Now, to explain how the for loop works, it's basically creating an integer that's equal to 0 at first. Then we're saying for loop needs to break if I is greater than 3, right? So if I is less than 3, keep going. If I is greater than 3 or equal to it, I guess, then break the loop. And every single time we run the loop, we're going to increase I by 1. all this plus plus really means is just like increasing by 1. So therefore, using the math, we're going to go from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, then 2 to 3, which means that we're going to loop 3 times. Inside of this for loop here, I'm just going to say system.out.print line. And I can actually even just print out I, so you can see that I, like, what I is equal to as the for loop goes on. Let's see. Yeah, let's just do that. So let's go and say, run my code. And you can see I is equal to 1. I is equal to 0. Then I is equal to 1. Then I is equal to 2. And that is what happens as my integer I increases throughout this for loop. If I increased I to 4, then you'll be able to see that my code now runs 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's what I is equal to on every pass that we do inside of this for loop. Alrighty. Let's go over our while loops now, I guess. Let's do that. So I'll say while loop. It is a loop that repeats forever. And it does a certain action forever until a condition is false, right? Until the condition is false. All right. So you're going to see actually that my while loop is pretty similar to an if statement, except it has a while in front. And that's for a reason. So maybe I'll say this. While my decimal number is not equal to 5, I'll say this. I'll do my curly brackets again, and I'll say this. System.out.println decimal number. And I'm going to increase my decimal number by a certain amount. So you can actually modify variables as well in Java by just saying like plus equals a certain amount. So I'll say, let's make decimal number like an even thing, like 50 or something. And then I can say decimal number plus equals 0.5. Okay. Now what the plus equal means, as I just said, it's going to increase decimal number by 0.5, and you'll be able to see that inside our while statement. So I'll run my code, and you'll see that I have 2.5, 3.0, 3.5, 4.0, and 4.5. Okay. All of these are pretty, clearly they are doubles. And as you increase them by their 0.5 each time, then you're going to get closer and closer to that 5 mark until you eventually reach it. You reach 5 or 5.0, and we're going to stop the while loop. That's why it stops printing out and the code breaks. There you go. So that's your while loops for you. Now, I do have another challenge before we move on, just to make sure that you guys understand everything, which is this. I want you to do a little challenge. I want you to loop over every, loop over and let's do this. Create a while loop that stops when, whole number is greater than 8. Okay. And I want you to, let's do this. Inside the while loop, increase whole number by 1. All right. And print it out. All right. So pause the video go ahead and do this challenge, and we'll go over it when we come back. Okay. Now, after we've done this challenge, let's just go over it a tiny bit, and we will move on. So I'm going to say this. While whole number is less than 8, or I should say greater than, yeah, actually, this is a good thing. While whole number is greater than or equal to 8, curly bracket, okay? Then I'm going to system.out.println whole number. And before that, I'm just going to say whole number plus equals 1. Now, what's up with this whole number here? And why are we saying greater than or equal to 8? Well, think about what I said inside of the instructions for this challenge. I want you to create a while loop that stops when whole number is greater than 8, meaning that it can be equal to 8, it just can't be greater than it. So that's why I use this conditional here, which is greater than or equal to, which means that I'm saying, here's my whole number, and I'm waiting for it to be basically, oh no, shoot, while it's less than or equal to 8. So now I'm waiting for it to be greater than or equal to 8, but while it is less than or equal to 8, then I'm not going to do anything. So I'm waiting for it to be greater than 8. Sorry, that was badly worded, but I hope you guys understand how this whole while statement works. And I'll run it, and there you go. It goes to 6, 7, 8, and 9. 9 is officially when it is greater than 8, so it'll stop here. You also notice that since I'm increasing it before I print it out, even if it's greater than 9 here, or greater than 8, it's still going to follow through the rest of the code block before it loops back to the beginning of the while loop, just so you know. So that's why there's that 9 there. Alrighty, so there is your while loops and your for loops. Next up, we're going to move into something called lists, okay? You guys might know lists from just, standard English. A list is like a conjunction of different items that you put together in a straight order. This is very similar inside of Java, all right? I'll give you an official definition right here, which is lists. They are a quote-unquote list of stored values in a linear order that are all the same data type. Okay, so I can have a list of integers, which is a bunch of integers all in a row, right? I can access different parts of integers, different parts of variables inside of a list. For example, I can access the first item inside of a list, or I can access the third item inside of a list, right? And if the variable's there, then Java will return me the item that's in that index of the list, all right? It's a little bit hard to wrap your brain around it without some visual stuff on the screen. So I go ahead and explain that now. There's many different types of lists in Java. First of all, let's just go through your raw list, which uses the something called it's just called a raw list basically. And it doesn't have a lot of extra, extra functions on it. First off, I guess we'll talk about a list of integers. So I'm going to say int, just like how we'd say, integer my whole number, except we're going to add these square brackets, not curly brackets, in front of it. Now, when we add those square brackets, that's going to signify that it's a list of something, okay? Now, since I have my list right now, I'm just going to name it real quick, and I'm going to say whole numbers, okay? Short for whole numbers. And I'm just going to say is equal to a new int, okay, with square brackets, and we're going to close our semicolon. Now, you notice Java is giving me an error because I haven't specified the size of the list. If I go inside of here, you'll see variable must be provide dimension expressions or an array initializer, which means that I need to provide a number inside of here to dictate the size of the list. For example, if I say 4, that's going to mean that the size of this new list is 4. And that size cannot change after it's defined. So just keep that in mind, okay? Whenever I dictate the size of the list at the start, when it's initialized, I cannot change it afterwards. So with that, let's go ahead and start using this list, right? The first thing I can do is I can specify what is inside of each index. For example, I can say whole nums at, which when I add the curly brackets, it means that I'm accessing the list at a certain index, right? Because imagine you have like, I don't know, you have like the 4 indices inside of your list, and they all contain basically like a null variable at this point, because of the fact that I haven't put in anything inside of there yet. So if I access maybe like the second index inside of my list, then I can actually set it equal to a certain integer. All right. Yeah. So with that, let's do that right now, actually. So I'm going to say whole nums at 0 is equal to 3. Now, you might be noticing that whole nums is 0 right now, right? Whole nums at 0. Isn't 0 not an index, though? Because you just said we have the first, second, third, and fourth index. Well, inside of programming languages that are actually like sophisticated, so excluding pseudocode, your lists always start at 0 and end at the one less than their actual size. So yes, I created a 4 space wide list, but my list of integers goes from index 0, 1, 2, and 3. It doesn't have an index 4. And that's because of the fact that 0 takes up that first index. So everything gets offset. Just remember that from later on. Some of the challenges might include that, and so you're going to have to remember that. Alrighty. Next up, so we set this equal to 3, right? And if I just, print out system.out.println, whole nums at 0, at 0, then you notice that I'm going to get 3 as my answer. And see, you get 3. Perfect. So I just printed out whole nums at 0. What else are we going to want to do? Well, I can store what a certain, integer is inside of an index, inside of a different variable. For example, if I want to say int first index is equal to whole nums at 1, right? So at the index of 1 for my whole numbers, I'm going to get the first index variable, first index integer. Okay. Now right now it's going to be null, I believe. So if I print that out, let's see what happens. Whole nums at 1. I think it's going to get us null. Oh no, 0. Okay, so they all start at 0. So my first index integer, if I print that out right now, first index integer, that's going to be 0, right? As you can see right there. Change this back so it's a little bit easier to see. But since my whole nums at index 1 was 0, then this integer is now 0. And when I print it out, it's going to return 0. Alrighty. So that is your raw type of lists, right? But there are many more sophisticated versions of lists that have come out over the years. Specifically, we're going to talk about something called array list. And it is a newer version of it that is much more, let's just say, like I said, sophisticated. You can use it a lot much easier. It's very easy to iterate on it. And there's a couple of key differences between them that makes array list a little bit better. So I'll explain right now. An array list, it's still a list, but it's a little bit different. The first thing you're going to want to type is array list and include the I like to call them alligator brackets. I don't know what you officially call them, but you're going to need to import array list. So in array list, press enter, and the alligator brackets. Inside of the alligator brackets, you're going to include a data type. That is the data type that is going to be stored inside of our list. For example, I'm going to store a string inside of my list, which is why I include string there. And that is basically the type of list we're doing. It's an array list of strings. I'm going to name this string list just for, like ease of use. And I'm going to say is equal to a new array list, and then include the alligator brackets again with the parentheses and a semicolon. All right. Now, one thing before we continue is that some code editors don't automatically import array lists for you when you do it. So you're going to need to say import java.util.arraylist at the very beginning of your code, or else it's not going to work. So why don't you go ahead and do that if not already, and make sure to check for it as well. If Java is ever giving you an error because it doesn't recognize array list, it's probably because of this. All right. Perfect. So next up, let's go into what array list can actually do. The first big difference between this and a raw integer list is that array lists don't have a set cap on their size, right? Their size can be, I don't know, like 4, it could be 3, it could be 8, right? It doesn't really matter how many indices an array list has. So for example, I can say, right now my array list has 0 indices. So I can say string list dot add, and this is going to add to the end. I'm going to say, let's see. Really anything. I'll say like apples. All right. So my string list just added apples to it. So if I print out my string list, it's just going to say apples. All right. What I can also do is I can say string list dot set, which is going to set at a certain index a string. So for example, I can say set at index 2 oranges. And if I print out my array list, you're going to see something interesting. All right, what error is it giving us? Index out of bounds. Oh, yeah, sorry. If you're going to set this, you need to actually have the index set there. So I'm going to just say add. Let's see if this works. Sometimes it doesn't work as well. Yeah, it doesn't work. Fine. I'm going to say add index 1. There you go. So basically, I'm going to add another one, and then we can say string list dot set at maybe index 1 to bananas. And I can modify this index to be whatever I want it to be. So if I print it out before I do the bananas and after, then you'll see 2 different lists. See? My apples, which never changed. But at first, index 1 was oranges, but now my index 1 is bananas. All right. So that's really how your array lists are going to work. All right. Yeah, one last thing actually that I can do is I can remove objects inside of my list. So for example, I can say string list dot remove. I can say maybe bananas. Right. Now, if I print out my list, you'll see that I removed the item bananas from my list, and so now it doesn't have it anymore. It's just gone to apples. All right. We can also store things inside, like store a variable from an index inside of my array list. For example, I can say string index string, is equal to string list dot get index 0. So I'm going to get apples. And if I print out index string, then you'll see that it's going to get whatever variable was stored at index 0 and print it out because of index string. And there you go, apples. This is actually very similar to how we did our integer, because you have integer here, first integer index equals whole nums 1, and we printed that out. It's really actually the same code here. You get at index of 0, and you print it out there. So that's how your array lists are going to work. Let's see. You can loop through each item in a list as well if you'd like to, which actually, why don't we do that? That's the sophisticated for loop that I was talking about earlier that we're going to do right now. And I guess, yeah, let's just go through that really quickly. So we'll do this. We'll say for string, str, stands short for string, inside of string list, I want to system.out.println string. Okay. And I'm going to comment out a bunch of this. I'm going to comment out from like here to here so that you're able to see the thing. So right now I only added apples and I replaced oranges with bananas. And there you go. So I looped through every single string inside of my string list using this for loop. And for every single one, I printed out what the item should have been, right? So for my first index, at index 0, I printed out apples. And for my second, I printed out bananas, all right? So there you go. That is really all that you need for strings, array lists, and all that. In Java and FRC, we mainly use array lists if we're going to use them at all, just because of the fact that they're a little bit more, like easier to use, and there's a lot more functionality with them. So with that, I have another challenge for you guys. All right, so challenge. This challenge is going to be to make a list of strings that is initially empty. All right. Actually, let me make this a multi one. There we go. Then I want you to add 3 strings to that list. I want you to replace one string with the line with this replaced string. Okay. And lastly, I want you to loop over all items in the list and print each one out. Okay. It's really what we did inside of here. If you're very, very stuck, you can look back at this. But that's your challenge. Feel free to pause the video really quickly. Go ahead and do that challenge and come right back. All righty. With that, we have gone through a bunch of different stuff here. We've gone through our variables, our conditionals, our loops, and our lists. Now we're going to go over our last major concept before, like the object-oriented programming stuff, which is dictionaries. Okay. I'm not going to go over our last challenge just because of the fact that it's all, right here and for the sake of your time. But if you are confused, feel free to add something in the comments and I'll reply as soon as possible. So with that, let's go over our next item, which is dictionaries. Okay. Now they're known as dictionaries in like the broader programming sense, but in our Java, they're known as hash maps. Okay. The reason they're known as hash maps in Java is because that's the class that we use for it. Basically, like imagine you're like importing a certain library that you can use, and inside of that, there's a bunch of functions that you can use. Okay, we'll get into that later. But they're otherwise known as hash maps. It's a set of keys and values that allow for accessing stored variables. Okay. Basically, each dictionary has two things prepared, right? The first thing that it has is a key. A key is kind of exactly like it is in like real life. You have a key to a door. That key is how you access whatever is stored inside the door, right? So if I have a key to a closet, the item inside the closet, maybe like a broom, is my value, right? So if you think about it like that, that is your keys and values inside of a dictionary. Let's go into how you actually use that stuff inside of the code. So first off, I'll just define key again for you and value in case you want to look back. But a key is what you give a dictionary, dict, I'll short call it, to access a value. This can be any data type. Right? And then a value. You can also say what the stored variable by what the stored variable is. This can also be any data type. The value does not have to be the same data type as the key. All right. So that's something important. It doesn't have to be the same data type as the key. And that's what we will see right now. So how you actually create a dictionary is via this. We're going to say hash map. And remember, press enter here to import it at the top. You'll see I'm saying import java.util.hashmap, which is important to have, or else your code is not going to work. Okay. So after you've imported that, we're going to have the alligator brackets, just like our array list. And we're going to specify two things. We're going to specify the data type of the key, and we're going to specify the data type of the value. So for example, I'm going to have a string as the data type of my key and an integer as the data type of my value. Okay. Next up, let's give it a name. I'm just going to call it dict. Yeah, we'll just call it dict for now. And this dictionary is going to be equal to a new hash map with the alligator brackets and the parentheses afterwards, and you're going to save. Alrighty, there you go. So that's your hash map, okay? Now, our dictionary here has a bunch of different utilities to it. First off, if I say dict.put apple, and I price it at 50, then, oh, that's what I wanted to do. If you want, you can rename this to store. I'm going to do that just so that it has a little story going behind it. But this store is going to have a bunch of different items that have certain prices. All right. So first off, what I can say here is store.put apple at the value of $50. Okay. 50 is going to be an integer here. If you wanted to do dollars and cents, you'd have to make that into a double. That's correct. So I'm going to say store.put apple value 50. Since my hash map also doesn't have an initial size, we're going to need to keep adding items to it if we want to use it. So store.put apple value 50. We can also say store.put bananas at the value of 75. I can say store.put oranges at the price of 65. There you go. I'll put apples there. So now these three live together inside of my dictionary, with the key being apples, bananas, oranges, and the values being 50, 75, and 65 respectively. You'll notice that it doesn't really have indices. That's for a list. A dictionary is more like, yeah, just keys and values. All right. Now, if I wanted to say integer banana price, and I wanted to get the price of bananas, I can say store.get bananas. And that's going to get the price of the bananas. All right. So if I print out banana price, you should notice that banana price is equal to 75, as you can see right there. All right. Cool. With that, let's also do something cool, which is remove things. So I'm going to say store.remove, and I'm going to input the oranges key in order to remove the oranges. So now if I print out my store, I should not get oranges inside of here. There you go. It has apples is equal to 50, bananas equal to 75, but oranges are nowhere to be seen, sadly, because of the fact that I removed oranges. And you notice that they come in pairs, right? Apples is equal to 50, bananas is equal to 75. So when I remove oranges, I'm removing that 65 that came with it as well. All right. Last things before our challenge is that you can loop over things in a dictionary as well. You can loop through the key sets, which is basically all the keys inside of a dictionary. You can also loop through the values of a dictionary as well. Both are very interesting to do. First off, let's talk about looping over my key set. So I'll say for, here, I'll make a new line. For, or my key strings. So string str, or no, I'll say like item. Inside of my store dot key set with parentheses. Sorry. Key set, there we go, with curly brackets now. Store key set. If I just print out that item, then you're going to see that I just have the apples and I have the bananas there. I'm going to comment out this so that we don't get so much fuzz. And we also have our oranges back. So there you go. We have apples, bananas, oranges. There we go. That's our key set. So we loop through all the three keys of apples, bananas, and oranges. But I can also loop through my values. So I can say int price inside of my store.values. You see a collection of integers. Then I can say system.out.println price. And that's going to give us first the keys and then the prices. So you see, I have my keys, which are apples, bananas, oranges. And then I have my prices, 50, 75, and 65. Now, it's funny, actually. There we go. We got it. Apples, bananas, oranges, and our 50, 75, 65. Alrighty. So there you go. That's the basics of a hash map and what you need to use for dictionaries. Now, our next challenge is going to be pretty cookie cutter. It's going to be this. Let me make this like this. There we go. Our next challenge. It's going to be to create a hash map of doubles as the keys and strings as values. I'll just say doubles as keys and string as values. I want you to add in 3 key value pairs, which is basically add in like store.put, maybe, I don't know, steak at a value of 85. Then I want you to remove one of the items. Then I want you to loop over each of the remaining items and print out their values. Now here's the twist. I want you to loop over each of the remaining item keys and print out their values, okay? That's something that we'll go over in just a second after you've completed the challenge. Now with that, take a second, pause the video, and after that, come right back and we'll go over the solution. Alrighty. I've trusted that you guys have done all those steps and you've gotten to a solution, okay? If not, you can go back and check this. Now, the last step of our challenge has been a little bit more tricky than the other ones. And that's because of the fact that we have to loop over the item keys and then somehow print out their values, which is combining two things that we've done before, all right? What we can do is do this. We can say for, I'm just going to use my past one that had strings as keys. So I'm going to say string item in store.keyset. You'll probably have to use double item in whatever your dictionary is called, .keyset. And I'm going to say that the value, it's going to be an int value, is equal to store.get item, okay? Then I can print out the value. And you'll notice here that if I comment out these things, then I'm going to get my three values for my different items in my hash map. So what I did was I said store.get, which is actually the same function as my ArrayList.get at the indice, except instead of, at the index, which instead of getting the index from the list, I'm getting the key from the list and returning the value. Alrighty? So getting the key from the dictionary and returning the value. All right? So that's how you can do that. Not too bad, just need a little bit of creativity. Alrighty. With that, let's go over our next thing. Okay. So right now, this is the very basics of Java. Like you could probably do fine with this. But it's going to be very hard to understand the rest of FRC Java and a lot of object-oriented programming without the next couple of steps. All right. The first one is getting user input from the terminal. This one is less important for FRC and more important for, like, I don't know, if you ever take like USACO or any of those types of, like competitions, because of the fact that a lot of the time you're getting input from the terminal and from the user. Now, user input is interesting because of the fact that we can't control what the user gives us. The user could give us really anything, and we have to kind of whittle it down and give them an answer based on that, right? And that's the whole point of programming. Think about like video games, right? The code in video games takes user input from your controller, and it gives you back a response based on the input that you gave it. So with that, let's talk about user input. Start off by just defining it. User input is an input given by the user of a program, right? Mostly in the terminal for debug. Mostly, I'll just say mostly in the terminal, but could be from a controller, such as like FRC uses video game controllers a lot, or an external software, right? So software could be talking to software and give it an input. All right, there we go. Select user input as a definition. Now, in coding wise, we're going to need a new class, not class, but like function, I guess. We're going to need a new item, which is scanner. All right. Just like before with hash maps and array lists, we're going to need to import that. So you can say import java.util.scanner. I'll give you a second actually to import that at the top. Now, afterwards, We are inside of our scanner here, and we're basically gonna go over how we can use scanner to get user input, and then we'll go ahead and kind of manipulate it a little bit. The first thing we'll do is say scanner s, let's just say scanner is equal to a new scanner. The reason we put new here is to say we're instantiating the scanner class, which is what I was trying to hint at before, but I didn't find the words. So we'll say that new scanner. And you notice that it's the same system as system.out.println. We're just going to say system.in, right? Because system.out means we're outputting to the terminal. System.in means we're inputting from the terminal, right? Just like export and import. So there you go. Using the scanner, we can get code, or we can get input from our user, and then use code to, just like, I don't know, interact with the user. So that I'll say this. I'll say string input is equal to scanner.nextLine. Okay. And notice that my lowercase n is at the beginning and my uppercase L is afterwards. This is called camel case, and it's pretty important in Java. So there we go. If I output my input that they just gave me, so system.out.println, you just said, let me see if this works, plus input. Don't know if this will work, but let's check. What's this say? Yeah, it's fine. If I give it a hello, then it'll say, you just said hello. All right. So what I'm doing is I'm saying system.out.println, so print to the terminal. This is like predetermined code, and then plus the input that whatever the user gave me, which is why it says you just said hello. You'll see it again here. I say hello, and it says you just said hello. Alrighty. With that is the basics of user input. I'm going to give you a tiny challenge here. That challenge is going to be to get a number that is the user's age, and using a switch statement, check if their age is within a certain group. It is actually a certain number because we haven't done groups yet. So for example, you could do like 3, 4, 70, 70, or 89, right? And then tell them their age is cool if it is that number. I should really make this a double thing. So is a certain number, and then I'll just say tell them their age is cool if it is one of those numbers. All right. I'm going to do a little add-on to the challenge, which extra challenge. Check if their age is within a certain range and print out their age group. If you know how to do that, or if you figured it out, then go ahead. Coding is all about different solutions and being smart about it, which is kind of like having a good imagination and being able to problem solve. So with that, pause the video, go ahead and do that, and we'll come back. All right, welcome back. Right now, let's talk about how we'd solve this challenge. First off here, let's go over the first part of the challenge, which is I'm going to need an integer age is equal to scanner.nextLine. So I'm going to get, and there you go. I'm going to get the next thing. Now, you'll notice here that scanner.next line is giving me an error because I can't convert from a string to an integer. So instead of next line, I can say next int. You probably encountered that as you're trying to solve this challenge. If you look into the types of functions that Scanner has, you'll be able to see that it has scanner.nextInt instead of scanner.nextLine, which requires a string. Okay, so moving on from messy data types, we have our age. Now I can say switch age, and I can say, oops, switch. I can say case, the age is 1. Then I can say system.out.println, that's a cool age. Okay. And you can do this over and over again for many different ages. So if it's like 79, or if it was 56, and if I give it an age that is that, so if I say I'm 79, then, oh, sorry, wrong input. If I say that's a cool age. Now, the last thing I forgot to do is actually break. So I just need to add a little break in there so that it doesn't repeat it for the amount of times. Just like this. If you got that, nice job. So if I do that again, I'm just going to put like hello. And then I put, let's put like actually 1. And this should say, yeah, that's a cool age. All right. So without forgetting the break, that is our solution to this code. Now, if I wanted to say switch age and I wanted to check within an age range, there's a simple way to do that, which is to say if age is between, for example, like 1 and, I don't know, like 20, right? I can't exactly say greater than 1 here because it doesn't have like, like a, however you call it, like the age at the end. If I say this, right? Case age is greater than 1, then that would also not work because of the fact that it's incompatible with the switch selector. So I'm sure there's a way for you to make it say like greater than 2 or whatever. But I'm just going to use standard if-else statements just so that you can see it as well inside of my code. There's many different ways to do it. So I'm going to say if age is, let's say, less than 20, right? So a teenager. And, which is an and statement is signified by 2 of these and marks. And all it really means is that 2 conditions have to be true in order for the if statement to be true. And age is greater than 0. So you're 1 or greater. We'll say greater than or equal to 0 so that you can be a child. And I'll say system.out.println, you are a child. We'll say 18, actually. Yeah, now we can say you are a child. So now I'll say else if age is greater than or equal to 18 and our age is less than, let's see, we'll say 65. We'll say you are an adult. All right. And then I can just have an else statement and say system.out.println, you are a senior citizen. You could also say you were old, but yeah, here you go. So if I input, oops, this is just the hello thing. But if I say maybe like 14, then it'll say you were a child. Since our ages can't really be less than 0, then it's not going to give me a problem when I say you're a senior citizen because you can't be less than 0. So whatever is greater than 65 is just going to say you are elderly. So let's do this. And then 70, you are a senior citizen. If I say hello and I am, I don't know, 64, you are an adult. So there you go. That is that for our getting user input. All right. Now, I really only have 2 things left before our final quote-unquote project, I'll say. And that is functions and classes. All right. This has been a pretty long video, and we're almost there, guys, so just keep going. But my first things are functions and classes. All right. Let's see. Is the screen still okay? Yeah, it's good. Okay, cool. So inside of here, let's go ahead and say this. I have my public static void main, which I promised you that I explain later, which I will right now. Inside of a Java file, it's always going to have a class that is the name of the file. So for example, the reason I named my class Java intro is because of the fact that I named here my file Java intro. Okay. Now, earlier you might have run into a problem where you experienced an error where it says like, hey, this is not compatible or whatever. That's because of the fact that you didn't name your class what the file name was, right? So if I name my class public class Java intro, then I'm saying this is a class that is meant to fit inside this file. Now, Java intro here. What a class is imagine a mold, okay? I'm going to use this analogy throughout my explanation of both classes and functions. But imagine a mold for a sword. The sword itself is not created yet, but the mold for it is like a class. If you pour hot iron into it, you're going to create that sword. But for now, it's just a mold. That's what classes are like, okay? They store a bunch of code. They store both variables and functions. We went over variables. We're going to go over functions in a bit. And there are what allow us to instantiate our code, basically like make it come to life, pour that hot iron in to make the mold into a sword. And they allow us to use our code in many different places. For example, this scanner, hash map, and array list, these are all classes that I use in order to store code. So that's just something to keep in mind. Next up is our actual functions. Now, using that same analogy, sticking to it, a function is like what the sword can do, right? For example, if I have the mold that is the class of my sword, then an actual function of the sword is that it can slash trees, right? It can make tree branches fall down. So if I slash the trees, then I'm using one of my functions inside of that sword. And so that's how we end up getting specific code that we can reuse. Right now, we've done all of our code inside of this public static void main. And that's basically the main function that we run when we run the actual class itself. For example, when I run public static void main, it's basically like running all of the code inside of here that we've created. If I created a separate function, for example, if I say, and you can type this with me, public void run, I'm going to say parentheses and curly brackets afterward, first of all. But second of all, the code inside of run is not going to actually happen until I say main has to run, right? So if I say system.out.println chop trees, actually, I'll name this chop trees just so that you can see. Chop trees. I'm going to need to, first of all, find a way to say chop trees, okay? I can't just say inside of here, chop trees. Okay, you'll see that there's no actual way for me to do it. It's just gonna give me an error. Okay. What I need to do is instantiate my class inside of Java, inside of main, and then run my code, chop trees. Okay. So why don't you type this with me? Say Java intro. I just say main is equal to a new Java intro. Okay, with parentheses. Then you're going to close that semicolon. Afterwards, you're going to say main dot chop trees. If I run this code, it's going to say chopping trees. I just have to give it this thing real quick. And this. All right, there you go. Now it says chop trees. Okay. The reason why it does this is because the fact that I'm creating a reference to my class Java intro, which contains the function chop trees. Now, once I get my class, this main here, then I can say main.choptrees. All right. This main is not our main, like the function here. It is a different main. So once we've instantiated our class, now the sword can chop the trees. All right. Now, if that makes sense, let's continue on and let's create one of our own sample functions. All right. I can actually put all of this inside of my run so that I don't have to deal with it later, or inside chop trees, I guess. So I'll do this, copy and paste it inside of here. You guys don't have to do this, but if you want to, you can. And then I'll just say, if I wanted to run this code, I could say main.choptrees. If I didn't want to run the code, all I have to do is just say main.not. And it is just don't say main.choptrees, right? As you can see there. So if I'll just show you real quick, if I say this, if I don't say that, then you'll see that nothing happens. It just gives me the starting thing inside of my terminal. All right. Perfect. With that, now let's go ahead and create one of our own functions to simplify printing stuff. Okay. System.out.println, it's pretty long for just printing. In Python, it's really just like the print and then parentheses. Inside of Java, it's pretty long. So I'm going to find a way to simplify printing out strings. All right. For me, what I can do is I can do this. Public void print. And I'm going to create parentheses, and we're going to put something in the parentheses. But I want to explain one last thing about functions, which is the void. Every function returns a certain value. If I wanted to say return an integer, then I would say public integer print. But the void basically means that I'm not returning anything. Okay. Secondly, inside of print, we always have these parentheses inside of our functions. But why do we have the parentheses? Well, they contain something called a parameter. Okay. A parameter is a variable that we pass in to a function that it uses to make it work. Okay. Inside of here, I'm going to take a string as a parameter, and that parameter is going to be called str, basically like the shorthand for a string. And I'm going to include that same curly brackets to end it as well. Now, we have our public void print, and inside we take a parameter called string. Now, how we use parameters in Java is we say, okay, I'm going to access the parameter via calling its name, and I can use that somewhere else. It's basically like another variable that only this specific function uses. So for example, I can say system.out.println out.println this string str, and it's going to take that string and print it out. So if I wanted to say main.print, and I can say maybe this is a utility, then it will actually print out this is a utility, right there. Even though I didn't directly call system.out.println, right, this thing, since it's in this function, I can later use it in order to simplify the system.out.println. All right. So there you go. We have our public void print. And that's an example of the functions that we can use. All right. So we've explained functions, we've explained parameters, we've explained classes. Now, I guess let's create one last little project that we'll do in a separate file. And that's going to be our last thing of today. All right. This is going to be like a final project that we can do. And afterwards, you will be officially all good to start FRC programming in our next video. So for now, though, let's talk about this project that we're going to do. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and let's see. I'll do this. I'll create a new file. So I'm going to just do new file. And you find a way in your editor to create it. A lot of people have different editors. If you're in VS Code, you can click this thing up top here. And I'm going to call this hotel system.java. Make sure to add the Java at the end, just so that it knows that you are doing Java and not, for example, like HTML or Python or something. All right. Once you've created this, let's go ahead and talk about it. So hotel system has been created. You'll notice that it automatically gave me the package and also public class hotel system, which is fine. Yeah. If you haven't, though, I'll just say this: public class hotel system, and it's gonna have the parentheses and go like that. All right. So that's really it. Hotel system. Now, if you want to use variables for all of your different functions, you're going to have to instantiate them right after the public class hotel system. We are not going to instantiate it inside of main. And as an example, I'm going to create our public static void main string args. That's the parameter that void that main takes. And then after that, I'm going to create a separate variable up top here that is string, I don't know, maybe like welcome message that is equal to welcome to the hotel. We have many different services. Okay. Now you notice that I didn't instantiate it inside of main, but if I wanted to say system.out.println welcome message, should let me inside of here. All right, let's debug this real quick. Why is it not letting me? I have an idea. I think it's because of the fact that we're not doing this inside of a different function. So public void run. So now, if I try to get it from, let's see. Now, if I try to get it into here and print it out, system.out.println welcome message, I can get it inside of this public void run that I've created. All right. Now, in case I cut the video, I just created a public void run inside of here and a public static void main. All right. Next up after this, I can print out my welcome message, and if I say make a hotel system, hotel equals new hotel system, and I say hotel dot run, it should allow me to run this. There we go. Welcome to the hotel. We have many different services. So as you can see here, I can't really run any variables inside of the main, as you saw that was the problem earlier. So if I say system.out.println welcome message, you'll notice that it says I can't make a reference to a static object, right? Static field. So that's why we have a separate public void run, right? You can name run anything actually, but I just like to name it run. All right. Next up here, what are we going to want to do? Well, we have our hotel.run, right? And we set this up. But inside of my run, I guess we're going to run the main hotel loop, okay? How a lot of text-based services go is they have a main loop that runs you through the entirety of the service. And depending on what you give the computer, it's going to output you a different part of that loop, all right? For us, this main project is going to be creating a hotel service where you can check in people and you can check out people, okay? The person will have a name, and they will also have a certain amount of time they are staying there, okay? And after that, we're going to create a dictionary of the amount of people staying in and when they are leaving. Actually, let's think. I thought of this a little bit earlier, but maybe there's a better solution. Maybe we can do something cooler. We can do their name, and we can do an integer of the amount of people in their family, all right? And when you check them out, you're going to check them out, and they will be gone from our dictionary, right? We'll also have a separate function that's going to be able to access those people from their, how'd you call it? To access those people and the amount of people in their room, just so that we can have information about that, all right? So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to say in my welcome message, welcome to the hotel. We have many different services. Afterwards, I'm going to have a loop message that says, would you like to, and I'll actually have this like this. It's pretty cool. If I do a triple, then I can just have it repeat like that. And I can say, would you like to, is where it'll work? There's not probably close by. Oh. Hold on. Would you like to, 1, check in, 2, check out, or 3, look up a person. Oh, we can do what room they're staying in. That's what's a good idea. Let's try that out. And this is not working. So what I'll do is say, this should work. I'm confused about why it isn't. We'll do this. Boom. And I'll say this. Oh, that's why. Yeah, I type in universal, which is not exactly the best thing. But we'll say this. Boom, boom. And we'll do this. Check in, check out, we'll look up a person. Okay, there we go. Now that should work. Okay, and then we can say this. What would you like to do? We're going to do a \s here and a \n here. \n means enter. It's like a return key on a typewriter. And also we're going to do this \s, which just means space. And this will be, you are able to. There we go. That should work better. Okay. Now afterwards, you are able to check in, check out, and look up a person. Now, what would you like to do? This is going to be the main loop message that we do when we run. So I'm going to say welcome message actually will be here. Then we're going to say while, and if I say true here, then it's going to go on forever until I break it. So I'm going to say system.out.println loop message. Okay. And it's just going to keep saying it forever and ever and ever and ever, which we don't want to do. This is why eventually we're going to need a scanner. So I'll say scanner s is equal to new scanner system.in. All right. I need to import scanner real quick. Forgot to do that. So you'll see this import java.util.scanner at the top. All right. So scanner s is equal to a new scanner system.in. All righty. Next up for us, I'm going to have, we're just going to say a string, which is input, is equal to s.nextLine. So that's going to be whether they want to check in, check out, or look up a person. Okay. And after that, I'm going to say this. Oh, you know what we can do also to simplify the user input is we can say 1, 2, or 3. That way, if they want to access service 1, they can. If they want to access service 2, they can. Or if they want to access service 3, they can. All right. And this will be an integer input equals s.nextInt. Okay. All right. Afterwards, we have our next integer. We're going to want to do this real quick. We're going to do a switch statement for our input. And I'm going to say case 1 is we're going to run the check-in. So I'm gonna comment this out real quick, but I'm just gonna say check in. Case 2, we're going to check out. And case 3, we're going to look up person. Okay. The reason why I commented this out is because it's going to give us an error every time because of the fact that the check-in, check-out, and look-up person are not registered yet. So that's why I'm just going to keep it like this. All right. And that's really it. There's not a lot of else things that we have to do. All right. But check-in, check-out, and look-up person are our main 3 functions that we're going to have to do. So I guess I'll just create them right now. I can say public void check-in. I'll say check-in, and it'll be empty for now. I'm going to create 3 of them so that I can uncomment out that code. So check-in, check-out, look up person. Just like that. All right. Cool. So we checked in, checked out, and we looked up the person. All right. Now, next up for us, we're going to want to do this. I guess we can, let's just do the check-in. In order to check in, like I said, it's the person and their room number. So I'm going to need a dictionary in order to make that person able to have a room number. So I'll say this. I want you guys actually, here's a mini challenge. Create a hash map with a string as the key and an integer as the value. And I just want you to create that real quick. Pause the video, really quick challenge. All right, we're back. So we're going to say hash map. Don't forget to import it. with a key, like I said, as a string and a value as an integer. It's going to be called person. People is equal to, or I'll just say people is equal to new hash map. All right, that was your mini challenge. Don't forget your alligator brackets. Now after this, I'm gonna say, let's see, let's say this. Inside of my function check in, I'm gonna say name. So it's string name is equal to s.next line. All right, because I want a string that is the name of my guy that's checking in. So that's going to be the name of a person. Okay. After this, I'm going. Ooh, actually, the last thing I need to do, quick thing, is I need to give the I'm gonna like system.out.println just a little explanation of what the player is gonna have to do. So I'm gonna say enter the name of the person checking in. Okay, just like this. Then we'll have the name. And we're going to say people dict dot, put the key is going to be my name. And the value is going to be something else. The value is going to be the room number. So I'm going to have an integer. And it's going to be room number. That's going to be equal to s.next line. And I'm going to say this as well. Or sorry, x.next int. And I say this as well. System.out.println, enter the room number of the person checking in. There we go. Now I have a name and a room number. Right? I'm going to put that in there. There you go. Then maybe one last thing is just system.out.println. You are checked in, sir. And I'll do the name. All right? Just like that. So I'm going to have system.out.println. You are checked in with the name of my person. If I decide to do this, let's go ahead and see what happens. So did I forget to system.out.println welcome message? Oh, it's over there. Welcome to the hotel. We have many different services. You were able to check in, check out, or look up a person. I'm going to say check in. Enter the name of. Did I do this wrong? Enter the name of the person checking in. I'll just say, like, I don't know what the mark is. All right. What did we do wrong here? I might cut this out. But let's see. Exception in third. Java. 54. 23. I believe what I've done wrong is if I do this real quick. If I comment out this. All right, let's check if this works, first of all, just in case. Oh, yeah, sure. All right, you are able to check in. Oh, shoot. Scanner.next line. Right? No, it is s.next line. Usually this doesn't happen. If I say int equals x.next int. This one. Come closer. Yeah. It don't make no sense. 79. You are checked in, 79. Whereas if this is a string, next. We'll just say next for now. Something may be up with this, but let's just see. Name, room number. Oop. One. Oh, I see. Yeah, it is next. Sometimes this happens where it gives us a little error. But let's do this. Next. Int s.int. This should give us an area. Int. Okay. There we go. Let's see if this works. One. And the name, it will be Marcus. And it will be check in room 79. And it should say, you are checked in, Marcus. There we go. So now I have my people dictionary that has put the name and the room number inside of this. Okay. So there you go. Now, if I wanted to, so that's check-in, actually. Yeah. So there you go. You completed it. Check-in. Checkout is sort of similar, sort of not. We're going to say system.out.println, enter the name of the person checking out. Okay. And next up, we're going to say string name equals s.next. I'm going to say let's do this. We'll say people dict dot remove name. There you go. So now the name has been removed from our people dictionary. And we can just say system.out.println. You are checked out plus name. Okay, just like that. That's checkout. So if I decide to go ahead and check out, I can say 1 check in and 3 if I want to. Oh, I forgot to break. I always forget to break here. That's a funny thing about me. But if you break inside of your switch statement, there you go. That should work better. So if I check in, M3, then if I check out, M, you are checked out, M. There you go. So you'll see that eventually if I try to look up a person and they're not there, then then they won't be there. So I'll do this and I will stop running my code. Whatever. So after this, there we go. After this, lastly, we're going to do lookup person. So I'm going to, have the same code, but I'm going to say if people dict dot contains key name, then I'm going to say system.out.println name is staying in room, and I'm going to say people get name. So since my name is the key to the value of the room number, all I have to say is this, and we will get the room number that the person is staying in. Otherwise, though, using my else statements, I'd be able to see that system.out.println name is not staying with us. I have to add that plus there just to say that it's the concatenation of the two strings. We say this name plus is not staying with us. There you go. So that is our lookup person, our checkout, and our check-in. If I go ahead and try this, if I say like I'll check in, I'll be M and room number 5, and I want to look up a person, say M, then it'll say M is staying in room 5, just like that. If I wanted to check out M though, and now I look up a person, if I look up M, and it's going to say M is not staying with us, right? And there you go. If I wanted to break, then, you know, maybe I say case input is equal to 4. I'm just going to break. And this should, this isn't going to break everything. I don't believe this should break everything, but let's see. 4, yeah. So it's going to be, if you wanted to, in theory, exit out of your entire code, there's a couple things that you can do. Basically, like, you can use the break if you're inside of a certain, like, how do you call it? Like, loop. But if you're inside of a double loop and you want to try to break out of this while true, if you do this break here, it's just going to break out of your switch statement. So what I'll do is I'll say system.exit 0. Since I'm exiting at 0, when you say status 0, it basically means that the code exited on purpose. If you exit with a status code 1, then that means that your code exited based on something wrong. So if I run this code again, and I'll say 4 to check out, then, or 4 to exit, then it'll actually exit with status code 0. Perfectly fine. I'll just say this, 4, exit. There we go. Last little thing that I will teach you guys. All right. With that, that is it. If you'd like an extra challenge, you can create a banking system with this. You can create really any system that you want with this stuff. This is the main thing that you need to know about classes, functions, and the basic programming in Java. If you like this video, please feel free to like and subscribe and comment down below what you thought was good and what we need to work on. I guess I will see you guys in the next video where we start to go a little bit deeper into the Java stuff for specific FRC programming. All right. Now with that, I'm going to leave you guys to it. Keep exploring, keep doing stuff, and I will see you guys in the next video. Last thing is, if you ever have any comments or you are confused about a certain part or there's a specific video that you'd like me to do, please feel free to comment down below with the type of content that you'd like. I can do CAD, programming, building, wiring, any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, feel free to comment down below. All right, with that, I will see you guys next time. See you Raiders out.